and we're going to start with some real fun. Every single time any of us have done any videos on Jordan Peterson, and I have some announcement actually that's coming soon. More work to be done on Jordan Peterson is the simplest way I could tease it. There's always a band of his cultists who really are sad, just sad, who will always say, like, how about having a conversation with him? He would wipe the floor with you. You people are totally out of his depth. He's a true intellect. And I don't preclude having a conversation with Jordan Peterson. Maybe it'll happen one day. Frankly, I doubt it, probably more on his end. He, of course, totally begged off of having a conversation with Douglas Lane of Zero Books podcast and debating an actual Marxist when he's, a great deal of his histrionics are about how the Marxists won't debate. But here is an example, and we're not even at Marxism here. This is this is like 8th grade level civics with the Australian Jim Jeffries, comedian. And Jordan Peterson and Jim Jeffries are going to have an exchange, like I imagine actually an exchange between him and I would probably go. This is Jordan Peterson and Jim Jeffries talking about the Baker case, and see where this goes.
Making people bake a cake for a gay wedding.
Making them do it?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a very good idea.
But here's the argument. So should they be able to deny making a cake for a black couple if they don't like black people?
Allowed to? Probably. That doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, so then we had the civil rights movement where they said black people, you had to serve them in your restaurants and stuff like that. And it did work and it did make our society better. But would you argue that that still wasn't right?
No, that was right.
Why is that different to now if you didn't want to make a cake for black people?
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not different. Yeah. Maybe I was wrong about that.
I mean, baby steps. I didn't realize that Jordan Peterson was so influenced by Louis Brandeis in his thinking. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Obviously, he doesn't know who Louis Brandeis is.
I mean, being able to admit you were wrong is a good quality.
Yes, that's true. That is a very clean your room quality. I appreciated that exchange. I appreciated that he was able to follow logic there. I don't appreciate that this guy has been given a mass platform and built a sort of content, a Western civilizational expanding cult based on, in no small part, off of his histrionic nonsense conspiracy theories about politics, and he can't even ground himself in the basic enough understanding to disaggregate things within constitutional law and the history of civil rights protections. I'm not thrilled about that, but I am glad that when it was laid out in front of him, he was able to follow the logic. I have no doubt that a similar experience will never be experienced with Sam Harris. Ever. So credit where credit's due. And maybe we all should host Jordan Peterson and just take him through some like very basic deductive reasoning on everything. Like, oh yeah, I was wrong. Might be.
Jordan might be Peterson.
Yeah, might be. So really, if you say somebody's pronoun wrong, you realize you're not going to go to prison forever. Well, I realize now as you put the law in front of me and I read it literally out loud. Yes, I was wrong. Might be. I'll just stick to writing self-help books. That'd be, you know what? There would be no beef if that guy just wrote some like fucking clean your room, follow your goals. Nothing wrong with that. Although people should read James Hillman instead of him. James Hillman was a great Jungian psychotherapist. And James Hillman in the 1990s wrote a book called We've Had 100 Years of Therapy and the World is Getting Worse. And the argument was that therapy had become an agent of internalizing problems that were societally created. And therefore, even though he wasn't, not only was he...
That sounds like hocus pocus.
Yeah, what a bunch of bullshit. Meanwhile,
clean your room.
Yeah, why don't you clean your room, James Hillman? Oh, you were the head of the Young Institute? Oh, might be.
Someone's been watching too many Adam Curtis documentaries.
Somebody's been watching too many Adam Curtis documentaries. They're too loud. There's too many things. There isn't a linear narrative. And James Hillman, in an interview with a Buddhist magazine, I was just researching this in 1996. The headline is, "It's not all in your head. The bosses are really out to get you," says noted Jungian analyst. And then he actually says in the interview, and this is in 1996, that Americans need to start reading Marx and reconnecting with the labor tradition, and that therapy is a noble profession, but all too often what therapists are doing is managing the waste of capitalism. Again, this was a guy who directed the Jung Institute in Zurich. So if there is this like powerful interest in these ideas, some of which I think are actually worthy and fascinating and far more developed by somebody like James Hillman, you should be reminded that you don't have to buy on to, you know, sort of the politics of a Ronald Reagan GE video from the 1960s. There's much more sophisticated things going on.
It's weird what sort of historical lineages get left off of the intellectual dark web.
Isn't that interesting?